Good morning. I am Representative Park Cannon from Atlanta, and I am the Civil and Human Rights Chair for the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. Today, the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus stands in solidarity with the Asian-Latino caucus against the policy of separating families and children at U.S. entry points. Over the last few weeks, an estimated 2,400 children have been taken from their families as young as 3 months old under a new policy by this administration. This, for conservatives and liberals in America, is something that we have condemned. This is a horrific practice that violates human rights values and also our social code. While there are no plans to reunite the children who have already been taken from their families, we stand here together to say that families belong together.
Good morning. I'm Representative B. Wynn, and I represent Atlanta and DeKalb. I am the daughter of former refugees from Vietnam. My father was held a political prisoner in his own country for 3 years, and because he cherished fundamental American values like the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, and the freedom to peacefully assemble, he, along with 30 other members of my family, including young children, made the decision to escape their country in pursuit of refuge. They had no understanding of maritime or immigration policy. They only knew this was a matter of life or death. But they had faith and hope in humanity for a better life. Their journey was treacherous. They were robbed and raped before they were rescued at sea. All 30 members of my family were resettled here in America. Through the good graces of Democratic President Jimmy Carter, Iowa's Republican Governor Robert Ray, Catholic Social Services, and an American couple, Dwight and Judy Friederes. They ensured that none of the children were separated from their parents. My family's story is no different from the thousands of families with children who are escaping violence in search of a better life. Today, I call on our country to show the same courage exhibited by the bipartisan and faith-based collaboration shown to my family 40 years ago. Reunite migrant children with their families immediately and call for humane and transparent immigration practices because families belong together. In Lumpkin, Georgia, we fund one of the biggest for-profit private detention centers in the country, Stewart Detention Center, which holds 1,700 detainees. In the past year alone, 3 detainees have died while in custody at Stewart Detention Center, including a 27-year-old who hung himself with a bedsheet after enduring 19 days of solitary confinement. Stewart Detention and Irwin Detention Centers have been cited for human rights violations because of draconian policies that do not reflect our bipartisan efforts to reform the criminal justice system in Georgia. Detainees should have access to legal counsel and medical care. And if that were the case, we could have saved lives here in Georgia, including that of the 33-year-old Cuban national who died of pneumonia while in custody at Stewart Detention Center. Detainees should be able to contact their family members and contact their young children. Non-criminal detainees should not be housed with convicted felons, and nobody should be forced to engage in hard labor for as little as $1 per day. I ask my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to denounce these draconian policies, to treat those who seek refuge with compassion and humanity, and to stand with us to say families belong together at tomorrow's rally. We should never be silent on this issue, and we should not rest until all 2,400 children are back in the arms of their families.
Thank you, Representative Wynn. We will now hear from our immigration attorney, who is also a member of the Asian-Latino caucus. Her remarks are right here. This is Representative Brenda Lopez.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I am State Representative Brenda Lopez from Gwinnett County, and I am a practicing immigration attorney. Therefore, I get to also see the daily impact and shifts of the policies that we've had under this current administration. As a matter of fact, I want to highlight just as a personal note in terms of what happens how these issues actually affect day-to-day people. We now have a Department of Homeland Security through its trial attorneys denying continuances for people that actually have eligible U visa petitions, for example, because they have been victims of crimes here in this country. That's just to highlight how these effects are happening, not only at the issues of what's happening at our border, but also the issues of what happens internally in the administration of these policies. Now, specifically as to the zero tolerance policy and removal of prosecutorial discretion established by Trump, this has actually worked against our national security by ill-utilizing our government resources and personnel. Border security should always focus on combating real safety threats and not on children whose reunification of thousands of parents has been forcibly removed by precisely the zero tolerance policy of the administration, while the parents are being detained to be prosecuted for a minor misdemeanor that oftentimes they are either given credit for time served or at best sometimes we had as something as little as $10 fines. Now on June 6th, a federal judge ordered that the reunification of these parents and their children be implemented in an expedient fashion. He ruled that this policy actually shocks the conscience, which is the legal standard that we use in these cases, because in fact separating and traumatizing families does meet this threshold. Families belong together, and Trump's executive order on June 20th purportedly ending these family separations has too many loopholes and does not address precisely the reunification of children and parents. HHS, which has now been placed in charge of this reunification process, still has no process. It is still very chaotic, and very few, if any, questions are actually up to yesterday were being answered, including the number of actual children that have been separated by the policy, where in fact they are situated, and whether or not they have or have not been reunified with their parents. Now, Congress and the President need to improve our pathway to citizenship opportunities and not be fiscally irresponsible on insisting on funding for walls or draconian enforcement measures that, in fact, again, do not make the U.S. safer. Here we have children's lives that are at stake. So I want to thank all the good people that have voiced their opposition. And I also call on those same good people and all Americans to voice their opposition to these inhumane and illegitimate policies with us tomorrow at the Families Belong Together rally and also at the ballot box this November 6th. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Derek Jackson, and I represent District 64. During the 22 years I served in the military, I had the opportunity to serve under 4 presidents. We are to support the Constitution and defend our democracy. Separating families is not one of them. This is not about politics. This is about morals, America's values, and humanity, especially when you're talking about returning the children to their parents. And we need all Georgians to stand with us, to stand for what is right. And so we can tell our children and future generations that we did our part in preserving our democracy. Now a moment of silence.
Thank you. Now we will hear from another member of our Asian-Latino caucus, Representative Deborah Gonzalez.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. What I'd like to do right now is give you the information about some of the Families Belong Together rallies that will be occurring not just throughout the state of Georgia, but throughout the U.S. Tomorrow's rallies will begin at 10 a.m. in their local communities on June 30th. The rallying call is that families belong together and that no child and no human belongs in a cage. The one in Atlanta will be held at the Atlanta Detention Center, 254 Peachtree Street Southwest in Atlanta, and they will walk to the federal courthouse after they start there. The co-hosts and supporting organizations for these rallies include the Georgia Alliance for Social Justice, the Council on American Islamic Relations Georgia Chapter, Asian Americans for Advancing Justice Atlanta, the Latino Community Fund, the Georgia Association of Latino Elected Officials, Project South, Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights, and dozens of other local and community social justice, immigrant-led, people of color-led, women-led, progressive, and faith-based organizations across the state. We implore our members of our different caucuses to go to one of these rallies that are local in their community. Those in Atlanta, we have members here who will be in Gwinnett, and I myself will be in District 117 in my Athens and Oconee community, and we ask all of you to visit us there. More information can be found at the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus Twitter handle at Georgia GA Black Caucus. And so we hope that you will join us tomorrow as we lift our voices to help these families reunite.
Thank you for attending. I'm State Representative Pedro Marin from Gwinnett, especially cities of Duluth. And just yesterday, watching the Spanish news, they were interviewing a mom that was separated from her children. At that point, the network helped to see if they can find where these youngsters were held, and they didn't find anywhere where they were held. So this is scary that families are being separated, and those kids, those children are going to places that even the networks cannot find them. I will ask now that if the press has any question at this time, we'll open it for now.
Yes, hi. Hi, my name is Audrey from Channel 2, Audrey Washington. Just a quick question. I don't know who this is. Anyone can answer this. Are there any plans for any the members to actually go down to the border?
Yes. Go ahead, Deborah.
Representative Pedro Marin and I are part of the National Hispanic Caucus of State Legislators, and we will be making a trip to San Diego at the border later on this fall.
Precisely because this is my practice area, I am coordinating as an attorney with a couple of organizations. We're just trying to work on logistics on where the most need for the volunteer attorneys. So any attorney, regardless of your practice area, that wants to volunteer at different legal service providing institutions can actually do so. So long as you're an attorney, they will give you basically a primer to be able to assist in the process. So I also extend that invitation to anyone that would like to volunteer.
And can you guys talk a little bit about some of what you hope to come out of this rally? Do you think that this will move the administration? Do you think it will move Congress?
Well, I would, for me, this rally, one of the most important things is to continue to together be able to advocate precisely for policies. How much that will change the mindsets won't happen just because of one rally. But what we have seen is that people voicing their oppositions has finally pushed the administration to do an executive order that was not needed. They could have just simply stopped the policy they just implemented, but nonetheless was forced to do so. So it's not only about one rally. It's not only about necessarily our caucus, but if we do have widespread opposition, there continues to be some political push, then there are some changes. I also personally, and I think I might echo this for many of our members here, one of the most important things about getting together is that we also continue to talk about where real more real political power or political pushes, and that's at the ballot box. And that's something, I think, a message that we're consistently pushing, along with obviously the improperness of these measures. So as we continue to try to motivate folks to understand that elections have consequences, and we have an election this year, and if we want to actually have more control and more power and more say precisely as to these measures, we need to make sure that we voice that at the ballot.
How many people are y'all expecting tomorrow?
Go ahead. What we've been told is that we have several ones. Gwinnett has one. The one that Atlanta has changed from a rally to a march. So they'll be marching. And last numbers that I heard yesterday was that they have about around 15,000 people that RSVP that say that they'd like to join that march. So again, there's several counties. Specifically, I will be in the Gwinnett one at 10 o'clock, and we have a couple hundred people that already have RSVP to attend. If we're going to move the needle in these issues, I always have said, since 2006, when we did SB 578 in the state of Georgia, the first anti-immigrant legislation ever in the country, we have to make sure that we keep on the subject, number one, and like Representative Lopez say, our voices to be heard. Not just me, not just the caucuses, but also regular individuals that wants to have their voices heard.
Is there any Republican state representative or senator going to be there as well? As far as you guys know?
We do think that this is a wonderful opportunity for bipartisan and across the aisle experiences. But what we do know is that we need some more political muscle on the Republican side. We are excited to make sure that they understand that when we did have pathway to citizenship opportunities, that the people were 96% compliant with going to those court hearings. And we need to make sure that our colleagues know that in January, when we do come back, we will be looking at the policies that specifically address these issues. If there are no further questions, we thank you for attending today and look forward to seeing you at the rally tomorrow.
Thank you.
Well, I have a couple questions, but I need answer in Spanish. So
Qué bueno.
Yeah, sí.
¿Tú quieres saber?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sí,
Yeah.
podemos hacerlo. Brenda, ¿lista?
This is a no, all languages zone.
Sí.
So,
bueno,
yes.
que me pudieran explicar cuál es el principal motivo. Bueno, primero me gustaría saber por qué hasta ahora y cuando la crisis de los niños ha estado por tanto tiempo, por qué reaccionar hasta ahora y qué se puede hacer desde Georgia para ayudar en esta situación.
Okay, ladies.
Bueno, hacia la primera pregunta sobre por qué ahora, no está pasando esto ahora. Precisamente una de las cosas que había mencionado es que las acciones que ha habido de la administración de hacer una orden ejecutiva para hacer un cambio de su política que estableció, precisamente fue porque ha habido ya meses, porque ya llevamos meses con esta situación de oposición a través de todo el país, ¿verdad? Ahora estamos, si estamos hablando específicamente de organizar alguna demostración, eso generalmente tiene mucha logística, especialmente cuando se está tratando de hacer como un mensaje a nivel nacional. Establecer una fecha es una logística difícil y se necesita también tiempo con anticipación precisamente para que se pueda hacer, como estábamos mencionando. No solamente vamos a tener una aquí en la ciudad de Atlanta, varias personas en sus distritos o sus condados lo están estableciendo, así que eso toma tiempo. Pero la oposición, las llamadas al Congreso, las diferentes servicios voluntarios que se han brindado, todo eso ha estado pasando todos estos últimos meses que ha estado estableciéndose estos problemas en la frontera.
¿Contemplan ustedes alguna acción legal para, como representantes desde aquí del estado de Georgia para hacer presión a nivel nacional o tienen alguna acción, digamos, desde el Capitolio?
Bueno, yo voy a hablar en lo personal. No sé si alguien más tiene algún otro comentario. Como oficial electa, no necesariamente. Una de las cosas que siempre se me hace importante en estos asuntos es que ya hay organizaciones que están haciendo este trabajo. Necesariamente duplicarlo no necesariamente es lo más efectivo. Y la razón que digo, por ejemplo, una de las organizaciones que sí hizo una demanda precisamente para agilizar la unificación de los menores con sus padres es el ACLU, que es con sus siglas en inglés, que es la Unión Americana para los Derechos Civiles y de las Libertades. Así que esa organización estableció una demanda que fue la orden del juez que dio para la unificación más rápida de los menores. De nuevo, hay muchas organizaciones sin fin de lucro que están más cercas a la frontera, que sí están considerando algunas demandas, porque todo va a depender, ahora que se haga esa unificación, la cuestión es si se va a mantener no separadas las familias, pero sí en detenciones familiares, y eso sería un problema que va contra muchas leyes federales sobre tener menores en detención por más de 20 días, como fue el acuerdo que se tuvo con el caso de Flores. Así que creo que en lo personal, creo que es más útil apoyar como voluntario económicamente a organizaciones que ya están haciendo estas demandas que simplemente hacer una por uno mismo.
Perfecto. Tú hablaste acerca de la importancia del voto. ¿Qué es lo que las personas pueden hacer para evitar este tipo de problemas en el país?
Bueno, con la situación que está pasando, sinceramente algo de que no era parte necesariamente del tema hoy de la presa de conferencia es de que la justicia a través de la Constitución, con los cambios que ha habido en la Corte Suprema o que va a haber, nos va a limitar bastante este aspecto legal que a veces teníamos como recurso. Así que hoy en día yo pienso que nuestros derechos se van a valer en votar. Es precisamente porque quién nos representa y quién al fin de cabo va a hacer las leyes estatales, precisamente va a ser las cámaras estatales de los lugares. Las ciudades, si quieren tener, o los condados como tenemos aquí en el estado de Georgia, los departamentos de sheriffs de los condados generalmente son electos. Esos son los sheriffs que están determinando si quieren o no tener acuerdos con inmigración. Todo eso se va a determinar por el electoral. Ahora, una de las cosas más importantes que podemos hacer precisamente es votar para las personas que somos elegibles para hacerlo. Pero personas que todavía no son elegibles para votar, tenemos que entender que también tenemos voz política, y esa voz puede ser precisamente en ser voluntarios para campañas, puede ser en continuar hablando y haciendo llamadas a congresistas, porque cualquier persona que vive en Estados Unidos puede hacer eso. No tiene que ser uno ciudadano para ejercer ese tipo de voz. Así que tenemos que entender que si hoy en día queremos ver una justicia y queremos ver un cambio de políticas, las tenemos que hacer escuchadas, con apoyando candidatos que sean más favorables y con nuestro voto.
¿Pueden explicar un poquito más sobre el viaje que tienen organizado o que planean hacer hacia la frontera?
Y primero a tu pregunta de que por qué ahora, yo creo que siempre es mejor ahora que nunca. Y claro está, yo creo que es importante, como estaba diciendo la representante López, porque hay cierta logística envuelta en todo. Yo participé en el 2006 de la marcha más grande, una de las marchas más grandes que ha visto el Estado, cuando se pasó aquella ley que acabo de mencionar, la SB 578, y teníamos alrededor de 65,000 personas marchando en la Buford Highway. La logística para nosotros tener esa cantidad de personas seguras, porque no es solamente marchar, tener un rally, sino que tener esas personas seguras es grande, y también nuestros calendarios para poderlos tener juntos. Pero como te digo, mejor ahora que nunca. Básicamente, la representante González y un servidor somos parte del comité ejecutivo de la Organización Nacional de Legisladores Hispanos, el Caucus de Legisladores Hispanos, y tenemos una conferencia en Arizona, ahora en el fall, y una de las cosas de la agenda que tenemos es que vamos a visitar estos sitios de detención en la frontera. Así es que estamos la representante González y yo estamos mirando, como dicen, con buenos ojos, en nosotros poder ver y presenciar esto con nuestros propios ojos, y entonces una vez que regresemos, podremos informar un poquito más de lo que está sucediendo de nuestra parte personal al verlos así ya de cerca, por decirlo así.
Pues es todo. Gracias. Chao.
All right. Thank you.